There are fights that settle scores on paper, and then there are fights that settle scores that have been simmering for years, carried through press conferences, social media jabs, and one infamous shove at a weigh-in that the boxing world never quite forgot. When David Benavidez and Caleb Plant finally stepped into the ring together in Las Vegas, it wasn't just a super middleweight title fight. It was the closing chapter of a rivalry built on bad blood, wounded pride, and two men who genuinely could not stand each other. Everyone inside that arena knew it. You could hear it in the way the crowd roared before a single punch had even been thrown. The introductions alone told half the story. Caleb Plant entered first, dressed in brown trunks trimmed with color, representing Las Vegas by way of Nashville, Tennessee. He carried the weight of a former IBF super middleweight champion, a fighter known for his technical precision, his sharp counters, and a boxing IQ that had carried him past most of his opposition throughout his career. But Plant was stepping into unfamiliar territory that night, because the man waiting across the ring from him wasn't the kind of opponent his skill set had been built to solve. Then came David Benavidez, and the entire building seemed to shift. Introduced as the former two-time WBC world title holder and the reigning undefeated interim WBC super middleweight champion, Benavidez carried a nickname that fit him perfectly, the Mexican Monster. It wasn't hype. It was a warning. Undefeated, relentless, and hungry in a way that made every opponent's night feel longer than 12 rounds, Benavidez walked out to a reception that made clear exactly whose crowd this was. The cheers weren't polite applause. They were a roar that seemed to physically press against the ring ropes, the kind of sound that tells a fighter the building already believes in him before the bell has rung. As both men settled into their corners, the referee delivered the final instructions, the familiar rhythm of pre-fight ritual playing out one last time before chaos was allowed to begin. Protect yourself at all times. Follow instructions. Good luck to both of you. Then the words that matter more than any other in the sport: time to fight. From the opening exchanges, it was clear this was not going to be a cautious, feeling-out affair. Both fighters had waited too long, said too much, and carried too much genuine animosity into this moment to ease into it politely. The energy inside the arena crackled with an intensity that only builds when a crowd senses they are watching something personal unfold in real time. Every clean shot landed to a chorus of gasps and cheers. Every combination that found its mark sent the volume climbing another notch. Cornermen barked instructions between exchanges, their voices cutting through the noise with urgency. Keep working, listen to the body shots, great job, that's the shot we needed. Benavidez pressed forward with the kind of pressure that has defined his career, cutting off the ring, refusing to let Plant settle into any rhythm for long. That relentless forward march is what separates him from so many other big punchers in the division. It isn't just power. It's the willingness to absorb something in order to give back more, round after round, without ever taking a breath. Plant, for his part, tried to use the ring the way he always has, moving laterally, looking for angles, attempting to turn his technical sharpness into distance and control. But controlling distance against a fighter who simply refuses to respect it is one of the hardest tasks in boxing, and as the rounds wore on, that task grew heavier with every passing minute. The crowd's reaction told its own story throughout the fight. There were moments of stunned silence followed by eruptions of noise, the unmistakable sound of a room reacting to a shot that landed harder than anyone expected. Body shots dug in with visible impact, the kind that don't always show up dramatically in the moment but quietly drain an opponent's legs and resolve as the fight progresses. Voices from the corners rang out again and again, urging their fighters onward, warning of danger, celebrating the shots that clearly hurt. Watch out! Watch out! The kind of warning shouted only when something has genuinely rattled a fighter, when the corner sees a shift in their fighter's opponent that the crowd is only beginning to sense. As the rounds accumulated, the physical toll became impossible to ignore. This was not a fight decided by a single knockdown or a single dramatic swing of momentum. It was a grinding, sustained battle, the kind that tests not just power and skill but will. Both men had entered with championship pedigree, both had reputations to defend, and neither was willing to concede ground without a fight. That refusal to yield is exactly what turned this bout into the kind of spectacle boxing fans talk about for years afterward, regardless of how the scorecards eventually read. By the time the final bell sounded, the arena was electric, the crowd fully aware they had witnessed something that would be remembered. Both fighters had left everything in the ring. There was no hiding from the exhaustion, no disguising the accumulated effect of 12 hard rounds against a determined, world-class opponent. And then came the moment every fight ultimately builds toward, the reading of the scorecards, the verdict that turns raw effort into official history. Judge Dave Moetti scored the contest 116 to 112. Judge Steve Weisfeld scored it even more decisively, 117 to 111. Across the board, all three judges came to the same conclusion. The winner, by unanimous decision, and still the undefeated interim WBC super middleweight world champion, David Benavidez, the Mexican monster, had done it. The roar that followed the announcement was deafening, a release of all the tension that had been building for months of trash talk and years of bad blood finally exploding into pure celebration. For Benavidez, the victory was more than just another line on an undefeated record. It was validation. It silenced doubters who questioned whether his aggressive style could hold up against elite technical boxers, and it cemented his status as one of the most feared and avoided fighters in the entire super middleweight division. For Plant, the defeat stung in a way that went beyond the scorecards. This wasn't just a loss to any contender. It was a loss to the man he had personally clashed with, the rival whose name had been tied to his own across headlines and social media feuds for years. Walking away on the wrong side of that history added a layer of disappointment that no amount of technical performance could fully soften. What makes this fight resonate so deeply within the boxing world isn't just the result. It's everything the result represents. Two elite fighters, genuine dislike between them, a crowd fully invested in the outcome, and 12 rounds where neither man backed down. That combination is rare. Plenty of fights carry manufactured rivalries built purely for marketing purposes, storylines invented to sell pay-per-views that fade the moment the final bell rings. This wasn't that. This was real animosity settled in the most direct way the sport allows, fist against fist, will against will, until the judges had no choice but to render their verdict. David Benavidez's performance that night reaffirmed why so many analysts consider him one of the most dangerous fighters, pound for pound, willing to step into the ring with absolutely anyone. His combination of size, power, relentless pressure, and improving technical skill makes him a nightmare matchup for nearly every fighter in his division and beyond. Caleb Plant, despite the loss, showed the heart and championship pedigree that earned him his own title reign, proving that even in defeat, his place among the sport's elite competitors remains secure. Great fighters are often defined not just by their victories but by how they respond to adversity, and how they conduct themselves when the outcome doesn't go their way. As the celebration continued inside the arena, with Benavidez's team surrounding him and the crowd still buzzing from what they had just witnessed, it became clear this fight would be remembered as one of the defining moments of both men's careers. It answered questions that had lingered for years. It settled a rivalry that had grown far bigger than either fighter's individual title reigns. And it delivered exactly what boxing fans crave most: a fight where the stakes felt real, the emotions felt real, and the outcome, whichever way it fell, was going to matter. So now the question turns to you. Did the judges get this one right, or do you think Caleb Plant deserved a closer